Kakuma, and then to Lokitang, and then to Lodwar, where he was actually expected to address a rally here at the Moi Gardens in Lodwar town. But as it is now, that has been disrupted. And earlier on, as I told you, that we have been actually informed that the late Joseph Nkaissery was expected to accompany the president based on the insecurities in this particular county, the Turkana county. But that has already been cancelled. And as it is now, preparations are actually underway. It seems that the residents of this particular county are not aware that the president will not be making his way expected to this county. As you can see, this is Moi Gardens in Lodwar town, and already residents have actually streamed in, waiting for the head of state to address them in this particular area. And of course, as you can see, the screening is actually happening at the gates, where they just want to ensure that the security is up to the standards. And of course, that has already been, but we're waiting to see whether some of the leaders will actually continue with this particular rally. But as it is now, the rally which was expected to happen in this particular county, as well as the county of Baringo, has just been called off, waiting for further directions from the persons concerned within State House. But as it is now, Michelle, preparations are still ongoing here, and the residents wait for confirmation or rather communication from the authorities here, of course, regarding the cancelled presidential visit. Michelle.
From Lodwar, that is where President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy were expected to hold a series of rallies today, accompanied by the late Interior Cabinet Secretary Joseph Nkaissery. That rally has since been called off by the president and his deputy in the wake of the demise of Joseph Nkaissery. Just a moment ago, President Uhuru Kenyatta from State House in Nairobi has announced to Kenyans that Fred Matiang'i, who is the Education Cabinet Secretary, will now be the acting Interior Cabinet Secretary. News, of course, that has taken Kenyans by storm. This coming just a few hours after Kenyans learnt of the demise, the very sudden demise of Joseph Nkaissery. The country is still trying to come to terms with that news, still trying to find answers as to what could have happened. But contingency measures there clearly had been put out by security agencies to ensure that there was no vacuum in the event of the death of the Interior Cabinet Secretary. Now, here in studio with me, I have security expert Delano Kilu, lawyer Ndegwa Njiru, as well as Mohamed Abdullahi, who is a political analyst. And Delano, these are the contingency measures that you were speaking to us just a moment ago. You said you couldn't preempt before the president speaks on that. We've been speaking of how big the shoes have been left by Joseph Nkaissery. Is Fred Matiang'i up to the job?
Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i is indeed a very competent and developed leader, and he is certainly up to the capacity to handle the docket. As I mentioned earlier, these contingency plans which were put in place are not new things. These are not things that we started working on from a security aspect this year. This is something that has taken years to put in place, planning in case of any eventualities. And Kenya, as an advanced society, does have a lot of contingency plans, especially in the area and the docket of security. So these, as you've heard from His Excellency, the President, Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, is specific to this instance. And as a nation, I would therefore encourage a lot of confidence, not only in government and security operations, but also in the leadership that we have. And I would encourage us all as a nation to support the CS as he takes up the acting role in Interior, because it's not something new in terms of that particular docket that he is going to have to work with. Everybody is very much aware of the various roles that you may need to play from time to time, not only at the cabinet level, but also in the various dockets, supporting one another as your colleagues. And cabinet meetings which take place normally on Thursday, the various cabinet ministers, the cabinet secretaries rather, are very familiar with what is going on in one another's dockets. So it will be a very natural transition, and it really kudos to His Excellency and the government, the National Security Council that sat this morning, as you've heard, to put together and look and analyze and assess what are the threat and risk levels in the various areas, and then make this very quick announcement. This means, as a nation, we have matured. There's no vacuum. there's no gap, and as mentioned earlier, security will go on.
Right.
It will be business as usual in security. It will be a time of mourning for the nation because we have lost somebody. We empathize with that, but there's no gap.
Right, and of course, like in Ndegwa, you said earlier, life has to go on. So we continue mourning Joseph Nkaissery.
Exactly.
He clearly set a bar when it comes to the security docket. Talk to us about your thoughts on Fred Matiang'i as the acting Interior CS.
May I say that the president is lucky that he has in his pool competent people who are credible enough that he can just pull one of them from his cabinet. Fred Matiang'i, doctor, his capacity cannot be underestimated. He is a person who has performed exemplarily in his docket for education. He came and found a situation whereby people had lost faith and confidence with the education docket. He came in a very short while, organized the whole aspects of the national examination. Within a very short time, exams were done. Again, and traditionally, results were released on time. Again, and traditionally, pupils and students were admitted to their schools. So he's a person...
And a zero rate of cheating as well.
With zero rate. So I do not doubt the capacity and the wisdom of the president to having conferred Dr. Matiang'i with the responsibility of looking into the dockets. I believe the way he has been able to work out in the education docket, he can still double up and take the same charisma and wisdom into the security docket. So I have no doubts at all that what the late Nkaissery has left will progress. Like he says, it's going to be it's a very smooth transition. And of course, the ministry and the docket has what is called the perpetuity. What happens in government is that government is not an individual, it's an institution. So those institutions are able to carry on with whatever Nkaissery has left behind.
All right.
Yes, we wish him well, we wish Matiang'i well, and we need to give him all the support that he needs. Yes.
Mohammed, Fred Matiang'i.
Yeah, Fred Matiang'i, of course, my colleagues here have mentioned, Ndegwa and Kaitano. He's a very competent man, and he's running one of the difficult ministries very hard, and he has done a lot of good work. He's recognized over the country as a hard worker, efficient, and he's streamlined a lot of things in the Ministry of Education. He has got, it's a hot ministry. He has got, there are several strikes which are at the moment going on.
And let's focus that he comes here 30 days to the general election, so a lot of planning, of course, for the general elections as well.
Yeah, that's true. He will have too much on his plate. He has already a lot on his plate. Critically speaking, to have this other docket, which is also a full-time job, will be a little complicated. Of course, he has got other people that he will be working with in the ministry. There are permanent secretaries, there are security officers, but he'll have a lot on his plate. The president emphasized that this was a temporary appointment.
Right.
And because of legal reasons, there are a lot of things that the Minister of Interior has to sign to make it, a legal act. For instance, a declaration of a emergency or declaration of this and that. And this is a legal requirement that it has to be done by a competent minister or minister sitting on that particular docket. So that is important. But in the future, I think this is a temporary situation. I don't know whether it's going to be after the election or before the election, but both ministries are tough ministries. They are not Mickey Mouse ministries. They're serious, they require full attention. And I think in the fullness of time, and I don't know when, the president will make an appointment of a single appointment. I don't know when.
All right. And of course, we'll continue following up on this. Delano.
Yes, I just wanted to mention, because it should not be seen so much, Mohammed, as difficult for the Cabinet Secretary to take up this docket. You will recall that in the recent examinations, he has been forced to work very closely with the security agencies and the security operations across the entire country. So in order for the success that he experienced within the Ministry of Education in executing flawless examinations and results, he had to work very, very very closely with the CS Interior, the late Joseph Nkaissery, and you would recall that in majority of their meetings they were always together. Even at 5 a.m. in some remote part of Kenya, they were always together. So the CS Matiang'i is very familiar with the directors of operations, communication directly with the Inspector General, Joseph Boynet. He's very familiar with the county commanders all across the country. He's very familiar with, across the board, all the security organs. Because of the nature of his docket in education, he's actually familiarized, and he has on speed dial the bulk majority of our security leaders.
I mean, it's 30 days to the elections. What would you say would be the most pressing issues in his in-tray right now? Shortly before his demise, Joseph Nkaissery had stated that security agencies are ready to go in terms of preparation for the general elections. And so, like you mentioned, government is not an individual, it's an institution. All those measures are still on the ground. But what is in Fred Matiang'i's in-tray right now?
Right now, and I know this may come as a surprise to many Kenyans, but from Protective and Safety Association of Kenya perspective, because we have been involved, it's not readiness now. The country has been ready for elections since February from a security perspective. Since February of this year, we have been totally ready to deal or handle with elections from a security perspective purely, completely, from the Ministry of Interior. In fact, if you look carefully back at the bulk majority of statements that have come from Protective and Safety Association of Kenya, we have said we're working closely with the Ministry of Interior, and we're very happy with the preparedness. And I think you recall one of the statements that was made was that in one of the last things that he was celebrating was preparedness for next week's Junior World Youth Championships at Kasarani. And that was one of his passions. Why this was such a celebration is because this was like a pinnacle of his career. He has so secured Kenya that 150 countries entrust him to send their athletes to Kenya just less than a month before elections. What would make all those security leaders in those countries want to send their youth athletes to a country that is in turmoil? Nobody would want that. That means he did succeed at his job. He did a sterling job as an interior minister. But in terms of talking about CS Matiang'i, it also means that we're working with somebody who has had experience touching on the Ministry of Interior.
All right,
it's not a foreign concept to him.
We'll continue speaking about Fred Matiang'i, who is now the acting Interior Cabinet Secretary. But let's focus a bit more on Joseph Nkaissery. His demise has raised a lot of questions. What we do know as of now is that he collapsed at his home at around 9:30 p.m. last night before he was rushed to the Karen Hospital for a checkup, after which he succumbed and his body was sent to the Lee Funeral Hospital. But sources close to him, including Nairobi Governor Dr. Evans Kidero, who we spoke to just a few moments ago, say Joseph Nkaissery was a fit man, running every morning to keep himself fit. He is also a retired Major General who spent about 30 years in service, and he's a man who is described as being healthy overall. So what could have gone wrong? As it is, the country is waiting for medical report from medical doctors as well as government doctors who will be telling us what went wrong. But let's bring in our medical correspondent, Dr. Mercy Korir, who has been in contact with several of her friends in the medical sector. Dr. Mercy, what are we waiting for as is, and what are the doctors doing to ensure that they find the cause of death?
Definitely now what's happening is trying to trace back the last moments of General Nkaissery to try and find out if there's anything that could have led to his sudden demise. Well, what is happening now is just speculation on what could possibly have happened. And one of the things that is top on the list of many doctors is that he could have suffered what we call an acute myocardial infarction, or in layman terms, a heart attack. But now, as you've said correctly, the general was an active man who's been exercising. I'm told he used to run about 5 kilometers every day, but we cannot completely rule out the possibility of a heart attack because we have several kinds of heart attack. One that is caused by an accumulation of fat or lipids that blocks the arteries and causes a heart attack. And there's another type where we've seen, especially rugby players or very active players, who get what you call a hypertrophic hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, or their hearts become thick and at times this might actually cause a heart attack. So for now, it's just speculation on what could have actually happened to General Nkaissery, but a heart attack is not very far from this. And what the doctors are waiting to do and what will be conclusive is doing a post-mortem that now will be able to ascertain what exactly caused the death. And with a post-mortem, they'll not just examine the general body or the body of the general, but they'll also look at his blood and some of his tissues so that they determine. Now we'll just go to Lee Funeral Home to hear Dr. Evans Kidero, the governor of Nairobi, and what he has to say about the sudden demise of General Nkaissery.
Very, very energetic and pretty much on top of the world. So this morning when I had the news of his passing on, I was very, very shocked and taken aback. And